Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take that stack of sources you shared, articles, research, maybe even your own notes, and we basically pull out the most important stuff.
Yep, the goal is pretty simple. Give you a shortcut, help you get genuinely well informed.
Exactly. With some surprising facts, maybe a little humor, keep things interesting.
Definitely.
So today we're doing a really fascinating deep dive. We're looking at how artificial intelligence is changing things in ways you might not even notice at first.
Yeah, it's subtle sometimes, but pretty profound.
Totally. Like how it might be affecting our brains, how cars are driving themselves around, and even like the ads we see.
Right, we've got that MIT paper you sent over about AI and cognition.
Yeah, your brain on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
We'll unpack that. Then there's the whole thing with self-driving cars becoming more aggressive.
Sounds weird, right? But we'll get into why that might actually be safer.
Okay, looking forward to that one. And finally, AI making big budget ads, like the stuff you see during major sports games.
Exactly, high-profile stuff. So it's a really critical conversation to have, because AI isn't just a tool sitting there anymore, is it?
No, seems like it's really becoming this active force, shaping how we act, how society works, all in real time.
That's a great way to put it, an active force.
And that kind of leads us to this big question I think a lot of us have these large language models,
Yeah.
ChatGPT and the like.
Mm-hmm.
Do they actually make us feel smarter? Or maybe a little bit dumber?
Huh. Yeah, it's the question, isn't it? And looking at the sources, the answer seems to be, well, it kind of depends.
Depends on the task, right?
Precisely. So that MIT paper you mentioned, literally titled Your Brain on ChatGPT.
Catchy title.
It is. They had people doing essay writing tasks. Some used AI, some didn't, some switched.
Okay, and what was the kicker?
The key thing was what they called the LLM to brain participants.
Yeah.
These were people who used AI first, then did a task without it. And their brains showed weaker neural connectivity, less activity in the alpha and beta networks. Basically, the parts involved in paying attention, thinking deeply, they were less engaged when working alone after getting help from the AI.
Whoa, less active brains, that sounds not great. Is this completely new, though? Or have we seen this kind of thing before with tech?
That's the crucial historical context. Think about it, right? Books meant we didn't have to memorize epics.
True.
Calculators, spreadsheets, they took over calculation. Phones give us instant answers. Didn't these things also free up our minds?
Yeah, that's always been the argument. Frees
Right.
you up for like higher level thinking. So what's different here?
The paper suggests the difference lies in how we engage. They draw this distinction. Brain to LLM versus LLM to brain.
Okay, break that down. Brain to LLM.
That's when your brain is already fired up, really engaged in something complex, like a coder getting syntax help or a writer brainstorming. Your brain's in the hot zone.
Right, you're driving.
Exactly. And the AI is like a helpful co-pilot. It speeds things up, removes friction. That can make you feel smarter, more productive, because it's boosting what you're already doing.
Okay, makes sense. So LLM to brain must be the opposite.
Pretty much. That's when you use AI to just do the task, something you're not good at, or maybe just don't want to do.
Uh-huh.
You end up being more of a consumer or maybe a critic of what the AI spits out instead of a co-creator. You're not really wrestling with it deeply.
So your brain doesn't get into that hot zone.
Right. And that, the study suggests, might lead to that feeling of, lower cognitive engagement, less mental workout.
It's like the difference between using a calculator to check your math versus just punching in the numbers without understanding the formula.
That's a perfect analogy, and it brings up this idea of cognitive automation risk, or maybe cognitive atrophy.
Atrophy, like muscles wasting away.
Kind of. Think about industrial automation. Machines took over physical work, right? And average physical strength probably declined unless people actively went to the gym.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the worry is if we just hand over all the complex thinking to AI without engaging ourselves, are we letting our mental muscles weaken? Are we outsourcing thinking itself?
That MIT finding really lands differently when you put it like that.
It's definitely a wake-up call.
So what's the advice then? Ditch the AI. Seems unlikely.
No, definitely not ditch it. It's about cultivating cognitive resilience.
Okay. What does that look like day to day?
It means being strategic. Use AI for brainstorming, sure. Use it for summarizing big documents, fact-checking, things that boost your performance.
Augmenting, not replacing.
Exactly. While you consciously make sure you're still doing the deep analysis, the critical thinking, the original creative work yourself, keep those core cognitive processes sharp.
But let's be real. People are busy, maybe a bit lazy sometimes. Is it realistic to expect everyone to constantly use AI in that augmenting way? Isn't the temptation strong to just let it do the work?
That's totally fair. It is tempting.
Yeah.
But here's maybe a slightly more optimistic take. Maybe AI lets us be optimally lazy.
Optimally lazy. I like the sound of that.
Think about it. If you're, say, a scientist, AI could handle the tedious data sorting or literature review summaries, stuff that drains your energy but isn't the core discovery work.
Right. Freeing you up.
Exactly, freeing up your brain power and your time for the really interesting high-value stuff that you actually want to dive deep into. So you're lazy on the boring stuff to be more engaged on the important stuff.
Okay. Optimally lazy. That's a great concept. Being lazy strategically. I can get behind that. Fascinating stuff on the brain front.
Yeah, it's ongoing research for sure.
So let's shift gears from inside our heads to out on the streets, because this next piece is also kind of counterintuitive. You shared an article mentioning autonomous vehicles, Waymo specifically.
Ah, yes, the robotaxis.
They're apparently getting safer by driving more aggressively, like more like humans. What's going on there?
It sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? But
Sure.
yeah, the finding is that Waymo cars are doing things like rolling starts at intersections now.
Like, not quite a full stop.
Yeah.
What humans do sometimes.
Exactly. Mimicking those little human signals of intent, being more brisk, more decisive, maybe even a bit jerky compared to how they used to be programmed.
And that makes them safer. How?
Because it makes them fit in better with us unpredictable humans. When an AV is too perfect, too cautious, it can actually confuse human drivers. We expect a certain flow, certain subtle cues.
Right. If a car stops for way too long at a stop sign, you start wondering what's wrong. Is it going to go? It disrupts things.
Precisely. So being a bit less perfectly algorithmic and a bit more socially compatible actually makes interactions smoother and paradoxically safer. It's more predictable to humans.
It's like that uncanny valley idea, but for driving behavior. Too perfect is weird, but slightly flawed, more human-like, feels more trustworthy.
That's a great way to think about it, the uncanny valley of driving. They need to bridge that gap to operate effectively alongside us. Strict rules don't always cut it in messy reality.
Which makes me think, driving isn't the same everywhere, right? Driving in LA is not like driving in Boston or Austin or anywhere else, really.
Absolutely. Huge cultural differences.
So are these AVs learning to adapt? Are they becoming like San Francisco drivers versus Phoenix drivers? Do they need localization?
That seems to be the direction things are heading. It reminds me a lot of how chatbots evolved. Remember those awful early ones? Super rigid decision tree things?
Oh, yeah. Totally frustrating. You had to guess the magic words.
Right. Then generative AI came along, much more free-form, conversational. It feels like Waymo might be doing something similar, maybe using reinforcement learning so the car has more flexibility, like giving it a prompt. Okay, act like a typical Austin driver now.
Wow. So you train it on local data, give it some flexibility.
Yeah.
That can make a huge difference in how comfortable people feel sharing the road with them.
Exactly. Overcoming that uncanny valley makes integration much smoother. It builds trust.
But hang on, this gets even messier, doesn't it? Because it's not just Waymo anymore. You've got Zoox, maybe Tesla soon. All these different companies, robo-taxis on the same streets.
Yep, the multi-agent problem.
They're all trained on human behavior, presumably. But are they trained on each other's behavior? How does a Waymo car know what a Zoox car is about to do?
That is a massive challenge looming. How do different brands of AVs talk to each other, or at least reliably predict each other? Does your car's AI need to identify the brand of the other AV?
Seems like it might have to, which means they can't just rely on static training models, right? They need to adapt in real time.
For sure. Maybe using smaller, faster models right there on the vehicle for immediate adjustments, tiny models on device.
Could this push them towards like an open source standard? Some way for all AVs to communicate basic intent, regardless of who made them?
It's definitely a possibility down the road. Like, we have standards for communication protocols elsewhere. You might need a common language or shared understanding for AVs to safely coexist and interact seamlessly.
Yeah, otherwise it sounds like potential chaos.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've gone from brains to streets. Now let's talk media and advertising.
Right, the third piece. AI-generated ads.
And not just the cheap, junky ones. You flagged that ad from Kalshi, the prediction market company. That aired during the NBA Finals, right? That's major visibility.
Huge visibility. That's the big shift. Gen AI moving from the sort of bargain bin online ad space into high prestige brand advertising, the kind companies spend millions on for events like the Super Bowl or major finals.
And the results seemed pretty impressive, both technically and economically.
Just extremely compelling. Technically, the Kalshi ad looked surprisingly polished. Few of those weird AI artifacts, especially for something moving fast.
Okay. And the numbers?
This is where it gets wild. They apparently generated hundreds of options, got about 15 usable creative pieces. Cost around $2,000.
$2,000
Well,
for a national ad spot?
compared to traditional production,
Okay.
yeah. They estimated it was 95% cheaper.
Wow.
Took just a couple of days, one creator involved, and they estimated it got something like 18 million views in the first 48 hours.
Okay, those economics are undeniable. That's going to push adoption like crazy.
No question, but there's a big but.
Uh-oh. What's the catch?
The ethics, the legality, specifically likeness and ownership. Who are the people, the faces in these AI ads?
Because the AI is trained on massive data sets of real images of real people.
Exactly. So what happens if your likeness or something very close to it shows up in an ad you never consented to, never got paid for? It's not just text copyright. It's about owning your visual persona.
That feels like a legal and ethical minefield waiting to explode, especially if these ads become the norm.
It's a huge concern. How do we track lineage? How do we ensure consent and compensation in this new world?
So thinking ahead, is every big ad going to be AI generated in, say, 5 years?
It's definitely possible it becomes a major component. Marketing, at the end of the day, is driven by data and outcomes. If AI helps hit those goals, awareness, sales, whatever, faster and cheaper.
Businesses will use it.
Right. And it loops back to our first topic, that brain to LLM idea. If a human provides a clear vision, a strong concept, AI can be an incredibly powerful tool for execution. Faster, maybe even better in some ways.
So the bottleneck shifts again, not production, but ideation. Originality.
Precisely. Which leads to another question. What kind of ads will AI excel at? We could see hyper-personalized ads tailored just for you based on your data, ultra-targeted.
And dream of marketers for decades.
Definitely. But then there's the other side. Those big shared cultural moments, the Super Bowl ad everyone talks about the next day. Does AI kill that?
Good question. Do we lose that shared experience if everything is fragmented and personalized?
We might see both, honestly. Personalized ads for direct response, maybe, but still a place for those big, unifying brand messages. The real test, I think, is whether these AI-generated ads can actually move us.
Can they feel creative? Can they have that spark, that soul?
Yeah, that essential why factor, as you called it earlier. That thing human creativity brings, or will it all just feel efficient, targeted, but maybe a bit hollow, lacking that deeper resonance?
That really is the core question, isn't that? As AI gets woven deeper into everything, our thinking, our streets, our media, how do we make sure we're using it consciously?
To augment ourselves, enrich things, not accidentally diminish our own thinking or creativity or the shared parts of culture.
Yeah. What does it actually mean to thrive alongside AI, not just be managed by it?
It's something we all need to be thinking about, constantly adapting.
Absolutely. Well, that's a lot to chew on. We'd love to hear what stands out to you from all this. What are your thoughts, your insights? Let us know.
Yeah, continue the conversation. We're always interested.
And if you found this deep dive valuable, please do give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more, maybe hit that bell so you don't miss anything.
And share it. If you know someone curious about how tech is changing things, pass it along.
We're on all the major podcast platforms. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to diving deep with you again next time.